Raptors.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Raptors Weekly Extra podcast. Coming at you with an additional podcast this week. We had the regular Monday podcast with Zarar and I talking All-Star stuff that dropped Tuesday with Zarar's dad as a guest, which you should really check out. It was a lot of fun. Friday, Will and I will come to you with the normal Weekly Extra podcast, wrapping all things trade deadline. We'll try to get that up Thursday night, but you probably won't listen until Friday morning. And today, Will and I are coming at you with an extra podcast because it's the deadline week and things are already popping off. We're recording this Tuesday evening because two trades have already gone down. There are Raptors rumors out there, and the two trades that have gone down, they're not landscape shifting trades, but they have an impact on potential Raptors first round playoff opponents. So we'll touch on those quickly, and then we'll get into some of the names that have been associated with the Toronto Raptors. Will's going to throw out some potential trades at me because Will is the real GM forums.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see where that takes us. Will, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is it's nice to have like a mini trade deadline of sorts. Some things to happen right before the deadline, so it doesn't all happen within 20 minutes as it did last year.
Yeah, which was like a ton of fun, but also, I think everyone can agree it's better if it's spread out, and then we get like 3 days of it instead of an hour of insanity. And poor Zach Lowe, man. Of all the people to have a child born in trade deadline season, his daughter's first birthday, he tweeted earlier, is on the deadline, which means that every year it's going to fall somewhere near the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. Of all the people, like other than Woj, like you can't think of someone that would impact more. And Woj, it wouldn't even impact him because he probably just wouldn't care. He would just use Woj. Yeah, I mean,
wow,
Woj gonna Woj.
Slandering Woj. No,
I'm not slandering him. You read the thing before where he said like he'll be like on a plane with his kids and like he's not supposed to have his phone out and he'll like use them for cover as he texts and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he might show up to the birthday party, but like he's gonna be working. Woj doesn't take days off.
Woj mom, man. Spoiler alert. I know what the kid's gift is gonna be. Spoils
I saw
it.
Woj.
What? You saw Woj? Holy crap.
I saw Woj.
It's amazing.
He was... I'm surprised. I thought he was going to be, like, in a dark hoodie with, like, shadows over his face and, like, you couldn't make out who he was and he's just lurking in the shadows. But he's a real dude.
He's a real human. That's good. That confirms it. Yeah, trades, man. Are you afraid of the Pistons a little bit now that they have Tobias Harris?
I'm not afraid of the Pistons. I still think the Raptors match up pretty well with them. So, if anyone doesn't know, the Detroit Pistons acquired Tobias Harris from the Orlando Magic on Tuesday for Brandon Jennings and Ersan Ilyasova. Basically, the Pistons have cashed in some of their cap space this summer to get Tobias Harris, who is in the first year of a 4-year, $64 million deal. From the Magic perspective, I think more moves have to be coming because this makes no sense otherwise. Like, Ilyasova's nice. He's a rich man's Channing Frye, I guess. But, Brandon Jennings is Brandon Jennings at this point, and they didn't really need him. And I don't know. It's a weird deal. It's a weird time to sell low on Tobias Harris, it feels like. From the Pistons' perspective, though, Harris is a nice get. Him, Morris, Stanley Johnson, that's a nice forward grouping. They're pretty versatile on both ends of the floor in terms of switching assignments and moving through roles pretty seamlessly. I think Harris and Drummond is a much better pairing than Harris and Vucevic in terms of getting the most out of Tobias Harris. But really, it doesn't move the needle a ton for me on the Pistons this year. They need to make another move now to get a backup point guard because you don't want Steve Blake playing heavy minutes. I'm not sure with what the Raptors have that Tobias Harris is much more difficult to check than Ersan Ilyasova. Harris is obviously better and a lot more talented. But Ilyasova is exactly the kind of guy who gives the Raptors trouble. And
he's
Harris,
a certified Raptor killer, Ersan Ilyasova.
Yeah. And Harris is good and he'll be tough, but I don't think this moves the needle a ton in terms of what the Pistons would represent as a playoff matchup.
It does worry me a little though that the Pistons are now like super athletic in that starting lineup.
Yeah, they're going to. I've talked a lot about not caring about positions and like Nick Batum is Bay at this point for me.
Really
I think everyone knows that. And I was all in on getting Wesley Matthews with Damari Carroll in the offseason. And that's kind of what the Pistons are going to look like. Harris and Markieff Morris and Stanley Johnson can all play the 3 or the 4. Stanley Johnson can even play the 2. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can play the 1 and the 2. Like, there's they can go pretty seamlessly between the 4 positions, and then you've got Drummond in the middle. And then you've got Stan Van, who, he was a pioneer of that style of play, kind of the 4 out around a hulking center. They're gonna be solid. A big thing for this trade and for the Pistons moving forward with Harris at the 4 is whether or not Harris can ever knock down threes. Right now he's at 31.8% for his career. He hit like 36% last year, but that's the only year he's ever really had a strong percentage. So he's back down to like right around 31% this season. So that's big. If he can knock those down, then that's a very Stan Van 4 there.
Yeah, that's true.
If he can't, then that's that maybe cramps how they like to play. But even then, he can man the short corners, and his face-up game's good enough that he's going to have value for them out there. I think it's a good trade. I just don't think it changes much for them this year.
Okay, fair enough. It's just the athleticism that worries me a little bit with the trade. Like before, I wasn't really that worried about the trade at all. I thought the Raptors could handle them. I thought even worst-case scenario, you can always go to the hack and Drummond strategy to disrupt their flow. And I guess you can still do that now. It's just the athleticism, man. If the Raptors don't make a trade at power forward, which, I mean, we'll talk about it again in this podcast, like we have for literally the last 6 podcasts, it worries me a little bit if you have someone like Tobias Harris going at you as power forward. Just because, like, he has enough. You have to respect the jumper at least a little bit with him. He's kind of Rudy Gay-ish to me, actually, but he's actually the modern day Rudy Gay.
But Rudy Gay is still the modern day Rudy Gay.
This is true. Rudy Gay might also be on the move. So, maybe the Raptors, get their own Rudy Gay.
Nope.
Okay, we're shutting that down right now. We're not pairing
nope.
DeMar DeRozan with Rudy Gay again. That was horrible.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
One other small deal.
Yep.
Courtney Lee to the Charlotte Hornets. There are multiple teams and players and picks involved, but what you need to know from a Raptors perspective is that, one, it appears the Heat are going into full-on get under the tax mode. They sent out Chris Anderson to Memphis in this deal, along with 2 second-round picks, and took back Brian Roberts, who I would assume is on the move. If they can pay a team to take Udonis Haslem and then send out a Brian Roberts or a Amari Stoudemire or even a Gerald Green, they could get below the tax. With the news about Chris Bosh, potentially dealing with another blood clot,
which, by the way,
sucks, and
really
pour one out
sucks.
for Chris Bosh, like
For
the
sure.
best dude. I got the like scrum up on Chris Bosh for the first time this weekend, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it looks like the Heat, I wouldn't say they're conceding this season, but if Bosh is going to miss a long stretch of time, they might not even make the playoffs. And if Bosh isn't there, they're no threat in the playoffs. So it looks like they're moving into get under the tax mode, which might make them, not a threat for the Raptors. That's a team I think a lot of people didn't want to play originally. If Bosh is gone and they're going to move a couple pieces to thin out, then they're not really much of a threat beyond Dwayne Wade and Justice Winslow and a couple other pieces. I could even see, maybe Luol Deng's on the block, and I know he's your boy. I don't think it's realistic for the Raptors, but and then the second part of this, obviously, is that Charlotte has unloaded Brian Roberts and PJ Hairston to get Courtney Lee, who is a huge upgrade in that PJ Hairston role. Pretty good multi-position defender, can knock down some threes. He's an expiring contract, so it's kind of a this-year move. But the Hornets are make the playoffs or bust. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is out for the year again, which, God, this podcast is depressing already. It's a great move for the Hornets. Courtney Lee is a big upgrade on PJ Hairston.
Yeah, well, Courtney Lee is what PJ Harrison's supposed to be. Hairston always felt like a placeholder. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for the Hornets, especially since now MKG is out again. And this time it looks like for good. And hopefully, again, another really good dude like Chris Bosh, who, he's not dealing with potentially life-threatening injuries, but still really sucks for MKG to tear his shoulder. But yeah, in this case, I think, he's going to plug in exactly where, the Hornets envision Hairston, and he'll be slightly better. I don't know if it'll make them that much better throughout the rest of the regular season. I don't think it necessarily impacts their wins too much. Maybe it's one win. But
hey, that could be the difference, though, if you're clinging on to the 8th seed, right?
That's true. And you know what? Honestly, if the Hornets are still in buy mode, then any sort of fantasy you've had about Nick Batum, and I know, Blake, you've had a lot of fantasies about Nick Batum. Yeah, they're probably just fantasies, because I really doubt that they're going to sell Nick Batum at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I got some secondhand information about the Raptors and
Whoa.
Batum.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just that, when they were in Charlotte recently, they're like, Batum's still on the radar is all I'm going to say. I don't know much more beyond that. Breaking, Brandon Jennings just won the Pistons Magic trade. Tweets out, wearing number 55. Shout out to White Chocolate.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Hell yes.
Oh, wow. This makes the Magic a lot more watchable. I've actually had a season-long mandate to not watch the Magic. And,
really?
Yes.
With Elfin Depot and then Gordon and Harris.
These guys are
and
not
the
exciting
swag
players. Aaron Gordon's exciting, but I can catch him on highlights because outside
swag
of highlights, he's not very good. Well, yeah.
Highlights can't capture Mario Hezonja.
That's true because he's not playing a lot of minutes.
Yeah, he's playing a little more late. He's quietly putting up a pretty good, rookie season efficiency.
This is a great rookie class.
Yeah.
I like everybody in the top 10
DeLon
except for
Wright
Kaminsky.
is just awesome.
Well, he'll come on strong later on. The Raptors have not two great point guards, but one really good point guard and then a really good backup point guard. When was he ever going to play?
Yeah. Speaking of things that are getting tweeted right now, let's segue into... I'm saying segue instead of seg. I like saying seg like I say adjace for adjacent, but someone in the comments of the last podcast wanted me to say the whole word, and
we're here for the people. All right.
I'm a man of the people. So here's the segue. Things that are being tweeted right now. Frank Isola of New York Daily News doubling down on his earlier report from the weekend that the Raptors have kicked the tires on Thad Young, now saying the Clippers are also interested, but once again expressing that the Raptors are interested. Let's use this as our jump-off point into potential Raptors deals. Thad Young, the framework that Isola threw out there was Patterson, DeLon Wright, and a first, which seems steep for Thad Young, right?
Very steep. I would say Thad Young in the aggregate is an upgrade over Patrick Patterson. And we have to keep in mind that Patrick Patterson's been kind of streaky, right? To begin the season, his three-point shot was so off that it was quite painful. And defense was starting to sag off him. And if that's going to happen, then he's not that useful in terms of defensively. Patterson is, but... Thad Young's a better player, but, his contract isn't that great. And in terms of a fit... I don't really know, man. He's not that good of a defender. I'd say he's an average defender. He's never been a guy that's short on effort, so you can't even necessarily say it's a matter of, him not caring on the nets. He cares. He's a good character guy, but it's just awkward to pair him in the front court with Jonas. And then you throw on the fact that you have to throw in these prospects and a useful player in Patterson. I think that's just a lot to disrupt. So I really doubt that. And the Raptors will be capped out too if they, they're probably going to be capped out this summer anyway once they're, re-signed DeRozan. But if you somehow don't re-sign DeRozan, you're going to have some cap room. And if you use that up right now for Thad, what are you really doing? So yeah, not the one. I would say not the one. I'm not really in favor of that one.
Yeah, it would be different if he could knock down threes like it looked like he was maybe going to earlier in his career.
Nope.
I think he's maybe a little bit better of a defender than you're giving him credit for. I think he's on par with what Patterson's been this year.
Okay.
And he scores well inside the arc. He can pass a little better than 1.5 assists per game might suggest. One thing that would worry me, he's having an elite rebounding season right now, but it's an aberration if you look at his career numbers. Like usually he rebounds about as well as Patterson. Part of that is him spending time at the 3 instead of the 4. But part of that is, I don't know, maybe also just the way the Nets are playing or the fact that they don't hit shots. So he's better learned where all his opponent misses are going to go.
Also playing alongside Brook Lopez, who is kind of a weak defensive rebounder. I think that helps a little bit too.
Yeah, that's
Reggie Evans had like a Dennis Rodman-esque season playing next to Brook Lopez one time.
Yeah.
It's a weird stat to drop.
Yeah, there you go. The tough thing about that, when we've talked about potential Markieff Morris frameworks, even Ryan Anderson frameworks, there are deals you can construct where maybe the Raptors give up a better pick or throw in an extra pick, and you don't have to lose Patterson. You can go Scola and Johnson, or Scola and a prospect, or Johnson and a prospect, and then the less you give out in players, the more you give out in picks. With Thad Young earning 11.2 this season, you can't do that. Like even Scola, Johnson, and Nogueira, who are the Raptors' 3, say highest salaried
filler
unloadable pieces. Yeah, flotsam.
Yeah.
Even those three together doesn't get a Thad Young deal done under the cap. So this one's tough without Patterson. I agree with you. I don't really consider DeLon Wright much of an asset right now. But he's not nothing. Like, you need a third point guard on the roster, and there are only so many free DJ Augustines. I think, Patterson, and especially if it's the Knicks pick, it's a little steep for Thad Young, who is probably only a marginal upgrade. And, he's only 27, so the 3 extra years left on his deal aren't that bad. But, that ties up a little bit of flexibility, and the loss of that pick, I don't know. I think if that's the deal on the table, the pick may be more valuable come deadline time. Like, I don't think Thad's moving the needle enough.
Yeah, I agree. He's not...
Speaking of the Nets,
okay.
Adrian Wojnarowski last night outlined potential buyout candidates.
Ooh.
Andrea Bargnani.
El Mago.
The Raptors could use some shooting at the 5.
Come on, man. What are we saying here?
No, we're not saying that. Unfortunately, Mark Stein has tweeted that there have been no discussions between Joe Johnson and the Nets about a buyout.
He'd go to Cleveland.
I'm here for the Joe Johnson buyout reclamation in Toronto.
Y'all want John Salmons 2.0?
No, Joe Johnson can't play defense like
Oh, that's true, yeah. Forgot how good John Salmons' defense was, guys.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, boy.
No, I'm here for the Joe Johnson signing.
He's gone to Cleveland.
Honestly, I'm here for any signing that would result in the Raptors cutting Anthony Bennett.
Yeah. Well...
Like, I wanted him to be good so bad, but, like, you can't enter the playoffs, I don't think, with only 10 guys on your team that you could trust in a playoff series. You're just too susceptible to an injury. I think if they don't make a deadline deal, this is something to talk about after the deadline, but I think if they don't make a deadline deal, Bennett's at risk of getting cut. So they could sign either one of the buyout candidates or someone from the D-League or someone else that's, out there and going to get waived or something like that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If you have an injury or even just like very, very weird foul trouble and you have to reach down the bench to get Bebe or you have to reach to get Anthony Bennett, it's a terrifying proposition. I mean, and
Anthony Bennett's not getting called on. Look at,
never.
Like, Casey has paid lip service every time Damari Carroll's gone down to Bennett potentially getting time, and he hasn't other than the Mavericks game.
Yep.
He's not going to play.
Yep.
He's not good enough. I honestly don't even think he's the best Canadian combo forward in the D-League. I think Melvin Edgem right now has more NBA utility than Anthony Bennett.
Melvin Edgem can defend.
Pardon me?
Melvin Edgem can defend at an NBA level, I feel like.
Yeah, he's played a ton of 3 this year, too. His handle's gotten a little better. His face-up game's really improved. I'm not suggesting the Raptors sign Melvin Edgem, but, the only reason that Bennett's on the roster really is because it was a Canadian reclamation project. But
he's got Draymond Green's body, though. Yeah, that was literally a common refrain in the summer.
You also need Draymond Green's heart and brain.
Yeah.
This isn't Basketball Wizard of Oz. Bennett can't just wish for those things.
Well.
Okay. Other Raptors talk.
Yes.
Markieff Morris is done.
It's over.
It's Vince Carter right now.
Once you choke your friend on the bench during a game,
you can't just choke all your problems.
It's over.
You can't just choke all your problems. The big news on Morris is, for one, Woj last night, Monday night, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, Woj reported that the Suns are motivated to move Morris, but could hold on to him in the offseason. They have no intention of bringing him back next year, but right now they want to bring back a player of value with a first-round pick. Patterson would probably count as that player of value with a really affordable season on his deal next year. But then we're back to Patterson and pick, and Woj later tweeted on Tuesday, one contender who is not interested in Phoenix is Markieff Morris, the Toronto Raptors. So let's bury this one. It's done. No more Markieff Morris talk.
Yeah, look, with Markieff Morris, it's like this, all right? Imagine you're Masai Ujiri, and you're looking at this Raptors team, and it's the best Raptors team of all time, and, you played a huge part in constructing it, and, you have a great job security, everything. And then you're like, all right, what am I going to do to put my team over the top? You're not going to take a giant gamble like Markieff Morris, because as much as I've personally, as a fan, expounded upon how awesome it would be if Markieff Morris worked out with that contract, with that skill set, with his age, it'd be great. But that's a kind of a fantasy world. In the real world, this is a lot of risk to take on. I don't like to speak to players' character and all because I haven't met these guys. I don't know any of this stuff. But you watch from the bench. You watch from the television. You see what they're doing on the bench. You see that Markieff Morris is like among the league leaders in technical fouls. All the reports, they kind of point one way. So. It would have been a lot of risk for the Raptors to do something like this, and if the price is going to be that high, then yeah, no way.
Yeah, this is the thing. I'm always for improving the talent level of the team and figuring things out after the fact, but I think one, a chemistry experiment this extreme is an off-season move, and two, I did not expect the asking price to be a player of value plus a pick. Earlier, it sounded as if the Suns were going to unload him for anything.
Or even attach an asset to him. Remember when Zach Lowe said that after he threw a towel at the coach?
Yeah, you're a towel.
There you go.
Man, one day, if Markieff Morris is a Raptor, I'm going to tell him he's a towel. And he's going to choke me out. And then the Raptors are going to have to tell him, Markieff, you can't just choke all your problems. Okay,
all right.
Markieff Morris is done. PJ Tucker's still on the table. No one has said the Raptors aren't interested anymore. It's looking like when the rumor first came out, what I wrote about it was that, in some wording like this, is Tucker to me seems like the kind of deal that gets done at $255 on the trade deadline when other options have been exhausted, because you don't want to give up the kind of asset and salary matching piece that you might give up for Tucker, and then you take yourself out of another potential deal because Tucker doesn't move the needle quite enough. If you're talking about, James Johnson and a second, or James Johnson and a protected first to flip for PJ Tucker. It doesn't have to be James Johnson. I'm throwing someone out there for salary purposes. Maybe it's Scola, and then the Suns could save a little cash buying Scola out. Whatever the case, PJ Tucker to me seems like a $255 Thursday deal when the Raptors are they give up on, a Thad Young or whoever else they might be interested in and kind of tap out, and you're like, you know what, that's the only move we're going to be able to make. PJ Tucker's fine. He's a nice addition. He could be the 10th man. He could be the 11th man. He could play a couple positions if injuries happen. I'm not super excited about PJ Tucker. I think he'd be a nice fit character-wise and toughness-wise, and defensively he'd be fine. Those corner threes are nice. But that's not someone, if I'm Masai Ujiri, I'm waiting until the last minute to pull a trigger on that because there might be better deals out there, and I don't want to blow my wad on PJ Tucker 2 days before the deadline.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? He'll still be sitting there at that point as well. And I think he's probably the backup plan for a lot of teams. I think the one thing I thought was interesting was in Zach Lowe's column from this morning, not the recent one that he just posted in the afternoon about the Tobias Harris trade.
The one that he posted like 30 seconds ago?
I'm reading it right now, buddy. I
Hey,
apologize.
pay attention.
The one thing I thought Zach Lowe made a really good point about with the Raptors is that, in a hypothetical matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Raptors, the Cavaliers would be able to play pick and roll with LeBron and Love and just absolutely murder the Raptors. And it's not like, unless the Raptors go out there and get like Draymond Green, this is still going to be a real problem. But if you get someone like PJ Tucker, you play him at the 4. That's something you can now switch with DeMarre Carroll and PJ Tucker, and I think that's a very valuable thing to have. Not necessarily just for playing against LeBron and Love, but of lower caliber pick and roll combos that involve a big that can stretch the floor and a big wing. So let's say you play someone like Detroit. It'd be great to have a PJ Tucker to put at power forward.
Yeah, it would be great to have PJ Tucker.
I don't know how much I'd give up for PJ Tucker.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not that exciting.
Yeah, and if you're right that he's the backup plan for a lot of teams, then maybe the price gets too high at that point and you hold steady, which is something, I want to say this, it's probably something I should write about, but I'll hold off on it until after the deadline. But this will exist to prove that I'm not just carrying the team's water. I don't think the Raptors have to make a move. I think it's okay if they don't. We've done a ton of trade talk, way more than in recent years, because the Raptors have this window, and I'm totally on board with the Raptors going for it in this window, because how many times have the Raptors ever had a realistic chance to make the conference finals before? It's something you and I have talked about before, and all in's not the right word, but kind of 5% rule. If you think you got a 5% shot at, normally that's held for the title, but maybe in this case, if you think you got a 25% shot at the conference finals, which is the deepest the team's ever been, you certainly go for it. At the same time, the Raptors as constructed right now, figuring DeMarre Carroll back in, are the second best team in the East. And there's only one deal out there only one name out there on the market. There are always deals that aren't public, and Masai Ujiri operates in the shadows. So, but there's only one name out there that I think would change the accounting of a Raptors-Cavs series. I think right now, even with Carroll at 100%, people look at that series and take the Cavs in 5, maybe the Cavs in 6. The only name that's been floated
is Kenneth Faried. He's the difference maker, right, Blake?
No,
exactly.
Kenneth Faried
Guys,
might be the most overrated player.
This has to.
I'm not here for Kenneth.
This
Faried,
has to end. I don't know why the Raptors keep getting tied to Kenneth Faried. This is.
Yeah,
I'm seeing people say like Patterson and Ross for Faried, and I'm like, what are you saying?
I don't know if I'd give up
either.
Yeah. Well, you probably flip it if it's straight up, but just based on like. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm not
here
about
for
Kenneth Faried.
No, he's not the answer, guys. He's exciting as a
I was a little surprised. Was it Matt Moore tweeting yesterday about like how he thinks Fareed's a good fit with the Raptors?
Well, he's in Denver, and I definitely trust his views on the Nuggets.
But this is the thing. He's high on the Raptors and knows Fareed better than most people would know.
He says Fareed's been better defending the stretch fours, which is okay. But, I mean, he was really bad defensively, so better doesn't necessarily mean good. Yeah,
I wouldn't say he was really bad. He was just like maybe a little overrated because he gets the highlight reel blocks and plays with a lot of energy. He never came off as a smart defender for me, which is something that's kind of important because Patrick Patterson's biggest asset.
Let's just trade for Amir Johnson again, man. I miss him so much. Come on.
Yeah.
$12 million though. You're never gonna get to $12 million. But
yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
So who's that guy? Who's the difference maker?
The difference maker is Al Horford. So, Zach Lowe today said, this point is kind of unrelated to the Raptors. He pointed out that Al Horford is expected to value a potential fifth year on a deal in free agency very highly. In other words, if you get Al Horford in a trade, you have a good shot at re-signing him because you would have his bird rights. The Raptors would be in an interesting situation where they would have the bird rights to both DeRozan and Horford and could re-sign them both. Which is something that would be very difficult if they just tried to do it through the free agency route. Not impossible, especially if the cap estimate that Lowe mentioned today, that's $92 million instead of $89 to $90 million, is realistic and happens. But obviously, we should use that money on Batum in that case because
oh man,
I'm Blake Murphy,
man.
And I have to talk about Nick Batum at every chance. But Horford's the move. I still think the Cavaliers would be favored in a series, but you talk about defending that love pick and roll. Horford's a pretty good defender. He can play the 4 next to Jonas Valanciunas. He could play the 5 if Jonas Valanciunas is a part of the deal. He's versatile, which fits in with the rest of what the Raptors are doing. He's very, very talented. He's a good two-way player, and he has the type of game that you can kind of fit him in a couple different ways, and I don't think the Raptors would have to change much about what they do at either end to get the most out of Horford. The issue with the Horford deal, I guess, is that everyone knows, and everyone's been, the most tied-in guys have all been pretty clear that the Hawks are listening. What's unclear is what the Hawks want. So, if the Hawks are looking toward next year, like a quick retooling where they can stay competitive and kind of move forward with the pieces that they don't trade and some extra assets, then the draft pick cachet that the Raptors have isn't all that attractive. If they're trying to look, 2-3 years down the line to maximize their entire upside instead of staying competitive every year, Jonas Valanciunas, who in theory is a nice piece for an Al Horford, maybe he's not attractive to them because Mike Budenholzer likes to play a style that Jonas Valanciunas wouldn't really fit. Do you see a deal here for Al Horford? Is this realistic at all, or am I just looking at the biggest name and trying to shoehorn him to the Raptors?
No, I don't think so. I think that Al Horford, like you said, would be a beautiful fit with the Raptors. The one thing for me is the pesky Boston Celtics, who, thanks to Billy King and Mikhail Prokhorov's desperate need to have some big names when they moved to Brooklyn, traded away all these ridiculously valuable picks unprotected to the Celtics, and now the Celtics are sitting there waiting in line. They're first in line for every superstar. So unless a superstar better than Al Horford gets moved, I feel like Al Horford goes to the Celtics because they have the best offer. No matter what the Raptors can offer, I feel like the Celtics have a better version of it. If you're talking about intermediary guys, I would probably rather have Jay Crowder, who would be a cost-effective alternative to Kent Bazemore, who might get paid a lot, and then some, one or two bigs, like a Tyler Zeller or Jared Sullinger, although both of those guys are a bit questionable fits in Atlanta. Regardless,
they're also both restricted free agents.
That's true, but at least it depends. You could probably re-sign Tyler Zeller at a reasonable price, but who knows? And you can offer them one of the Brooklyn picks, and that's just like straight up trumps anything the Raptors could do. But if there's another big name on the market, and the Boston Celtics shoot their wad at that thing, and then at that point, then maybe the Hawks would want to part with Al Horford. That being said, the Hawks have played decently of late. It's not like they're collapsing. They're 8-7 over the last 15 games, so they have the number one defense over that time. It's just their offense is weird. They might move some pieces, so it's, like you said, it's unclear what they want. But if it's something like Jonas Valanciunas straight up, or Jonas and a pick, or God forbid, if it's TJ Ross, who I think with his poison pill contract, you could do something like a straight up swap and a pick, would you be willing to forfeit some of that for, kind of a rental, but also a rental and then future signing of Al Horford?
Yeah, I'm in for it. I've been a Raptors fan since, I don't know, like the later Vince years, like 2002-ish, maybe, a little before that. Mm-hmm. They've never had a window into the conference finals. That one missed Vince shot against the Sixers being their best opportunity. And as long as I've been covering the team, they certainly have never been this good or this close. I'm not managing my team for, making sure they can be competitive in the first round for 3-4 years. A LeBron injury could happen. A Kyrie or Kevin Love injury could happen. Even if those things don't happen, I think reaching the conference finals would be a huge success.
Monumental achievement for this franchise.
Right. So, Jonas Valanciunas, who's a nice player at 23 years old and has some growth in his game still left. He's an iffy fit with, modern defenses, and even modern offenses a little bit, but he's a really good player, and I'd be happy to keep him and have him be a part of the core moving forward. But he's not a guy. There is no one on this team other than Lowry and maybe probably DeRozan, who, if it comes to a deal like this, is off the table for me. The Raptors, Horford is going to cost a lot, and giving him a 5-year max when he's 30 years old is a whole nother thing. But if you're talking about an asset like Valanciunas, yeah, he can go out for Al Horford. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to give up more than that in a deal. You're looking at like a Valanciunas, James Johnson, and one of the prospects, I think.
And probably some pick. Maybe a pick.
Pardon me?
Maybe a pick as well.
Yeah, well, Valanciunas is so complicated because of the poison pill, too. It gets weird. I don't have it right in front of me what the framework would be. I know there is a Valanciunas framework that works.
There's even one that would work without JV or Ross. Like, you could throw them a lot of filler, basically, including Patterson.
Which, again, goes back to what the Hawks want, exactly, right? Yeah. I don't see Valanciunas as a fit with Atlanta. Maybe you get a third team involved and you route Valanciunas there to get Atlanta more of what they're after. Your Boston point is good, though. If, and honestly, it's crossed my mind, maybe Masai plays some chicken with Danny Ainge and Mike Budenholzer and tries to drive the price up so that even if the Celtics get Horford, which would make the Celtics, a very tough 2-3 matchup. Al Horford is a beautiful fit with what the Celtics do at both ends of the floor.
Yeah, he really is.
Well, although this is something that could come up with a lot of teams because Al Horford is the type of player who fits a lot of places on both ends of the floor. But maybe Masai plays a game of chicken a little bit to get that pick out of the Atlantic Division, that unprotected Nets pick that the Celtics own.
God, the Nets really. It's almost undeserved how one-sided of that deal is. Then again, Masai Ujiri did get a first-round pick from the Knicks for Andre Bernani.
Who, again, is about to be bought out.
Buddy, we're not getting Andre Bernani.
No, I don't want Andrea Bargnani. It would be hilarious if the Raptors signed him and then cut him after a day.
Is Andrea better than Anthony Bennett right now?
Is Andrea better than Anthony Bennett? Yes.
Wow.
He has an NBA skill.
Which is?
Pardon?
Which is?
He can score a little bit.
Yeah. He's shooting 18% from deep this year. It's kind of nuts.
I didn't say he could shoot.
That's true. And he really could never shoot that well.
No, he had a 2-year blip of being a good 3-point shooter.
13 games, man. 13 games. All right.
13 games. Yeah, so I don't know, man. I'd have to look at potential frameworks to see what might make sense for a Horford deal. If they're totally bowing out for this year and they're worried about re-signing guys, and you send out Ross in a deal, maybe Bazemore comes back because the Raptors are less concerned about his impending free agency. That's a way to maybe sweeten it, give the Hawks the cost certainty of Ross instead of Bazemore, who's probably going to cost as much or maybe even more.
Mm-hmm. Actually, out of the two, oddly enough, I would actually be more hesitant to give up Ross than JB, with not necessarily just because I have an irrational love for Terrence Ross, although that definitely is part of it. It's a spot-up option, man. It's how many Raptors can actually run around the screen and spot up, and it's just Terrence Ross and Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with Valanciunas and Ross when you're evaluating which you'd rather send out. One part is that Valanciunas is set to make a lot more money than Ross. Ross is a little older, and Valanciunas has a little more upside left to tap into, I think. But Ross is a piece that is more necessary in the current game, I think, than Valanciunas. You could lose your interior post-up big and not have to go find an interior post-up big to replace him. You could replace him with different lineups. Biyombo could play some minutes. You could get a different style of center that makes you a little more versatile. You lose Terrence Ross, and yeah, there are wings.
The market is
there,
looking for Terrence Ross, so you cannot get Terrence Ross.
Everyone wants 3-and-D wings, and Ross, for all his faults and his inconsistencies, has been a good 3-and-D guy for 2 months now.
Yeah, it's almost like we're afraid to say it. But yeah, TJ's been awesome. TJ has been awesome. And
Eli Bands.
Buddy, it'd be hard to part with TJ right now, which is crazy that he's jumped ahead of JB in terms of the value. But yeah, I would say...
I don't know if he's jumped ahead of him in terms of value.
Absolute value, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I think... I don't know, man. I love... You know me, though. I love... the move to kind of fluid, positionless basketball, and Valanciunas is kind of the antithetical to that, and Ross fits it really well as a guy who can, play the two, guard some ones, guard smaller threes, add spacing, is a great transition threat. He's Terrence Ross, though.
This is the Terrence Ross experience, man. Now he's suddenly untouchable.
The whole point of the extension when I tried to not talk myself into it, but when I tried to see the Raptors side of it is, it was a risk and one they didn't necessarily need to take. But you sign Ross to a 3-year deal that is going to meet the market, and if he progresses like you hope and he develops like you hope, I would think after July 1st when Terrence Ross loses his poison pill provision, that's an attractive trade chip if the Raptors need to, if free agency they come up empty and they need to make a deal. Ross has played well enough, he figures into the plans over the next couple of years anyway, but if they wanted to make a trade to upgrade, Terrence Ross at $10 million this offseason when the free agency bonanza stops, that might be a chip.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is weird.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk anything about the Patrick Patterson, Taj Gibson proposal? Or?
Yes. That was the only thing left on my checklist.
All right, let's go to that one.
So Zach Lowe mentioned in his column today, the Bulls may also want quality rotation guys instead of future assets. They've pitched Toronto on a Taj Gibson-Patrick Patterson swap that would give them a stretch power forward with another season left on a tidy contract and trim their tax bill. So, Taj Gibson for Patrick Patterson, you ask any Raptor fan about that deal in the offseason, and 100% of them say, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So why is this not a deal if the Bulls have pitched it? Why haven't the Raptors done it?
I think Patrick Patterson honestly fits the Raptors, what they're trying to do more than someone like, Taj Gibson does. It's the spacing thing with power forwards, and it's like it seems like a tired point, and almost like we're overrating Patterson. But again, you look at the on-off numbers. Patterson has been awesome in each of the 3 seasons here with the Raptors. And hey, Patterson's slightly cheaper, and honestly, that's a real consideration. It's not like MLSE is cheap at all. At least not with the Raptors of late.
No, it has nothing to do
it's a benefit.
with the check you're cutting. It's flexibility in the offseason.
For sure.
Patterson will make $2.3 million less. That's $2.5 million less.
Yeah, exactly. And that is significant. That's a real figure. And in terms of, I mean, it's Jonas is a bit strange of a building block to have. You need some things along with him.
You need that stretchy forward.
Yeah. And, now,
if you swap Valanciunas for Al Horford.
Oh, man. Oh.
Then you come back to this deal.
You're genius.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, the spacing thing you mentioned is an issue, too, because Taj Gibson has hit 1 3-point shot in his career. He's shooting 39.5% on shots from 10 feet to the 3-point line this season.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good at some things, and he's a great defender. He's, as good as Patterson's been this year. Gibson's a better defensive player than Patrick Patterson.
Yeah, especially on the rebounding end, man. It's huge. As much as Patterson is great, rotating all this stuff, he's not great on the boards. And Taj Gibson gets you all that rotating and some good rebounding.
Gibson's also quick enough and strong enough to give you some switching flexibility when Carroll's out there. You could put him on a 3 and it wouldn't be a big deal. You could get away with small minutes with him as a center in those lineups where Skola's played center.
If you can get away with Scola playing center, let me tell you about.
And then the fact that Gibson is also by all accounts a good dude. He seems like he would fit the locker room in terms of a work ethic and a toughness standpoint. He and DeMar DeRozan played at USC together. I don't think there would be any concern on that front. I think it's an offense-defense balance. There's also the matter that Taj Gibson will be 31 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And, he's had some injury troubles in his career. He's played 82 games only once in the last 5 seasons.
He literally missed the Bulls' last game due to a foot injury.
Yeah, that's not fair because one of those seasons was a lockout season. But
right.
He missed 17 games, then 0, then 20 over the last 3 seasons before this one. He'll be 31 next year. It's only 1 year left on the deal. It'll be highly movable like Patterson's would be. It's weird that this comes up now. And, it speaks so much to the weird spot that Patrick Patterson is in. But, Taj Gibson is a guy that Raptors fans have wanted for a long time. And now it sounds like he might be just out there, and now he's not a weird fit because you'd get away with it, and defensively it'd be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now it's not a slam dunk.
Yeah, it's like with the weird. It's like with the Tucker thing. If Taj Gibson is sitting there at the end of the night, and it costs Patrick Patterson to go get him, you probably won't do that. Instead of basically, the Raptors are looking to make slight upgrades. A big upgrade like Horford would be awesome, but at the end of the day, it'll be a slight upgrade. And if you're making slight upgrades, you're probably not going to trade Patterson. You're probably going to trade a Louis Scola for PJ Tucker and a pick. Or sorry, that's Louis Scola and a pick for PJ Tucker, something like that. Which super unexciting, but whatever.
I don't think the Bulls would sweeten a Gibson-Patterson swap at all. I think that's probably just a straight-up thing.
We couldn't get Tony Snell in that deal? Get Snelly Cat?
Don't call him that. And also, Tony Snell is a destitute man's Terrence Ross.
Jesus. That's all you need to know about Tony Snell. That, and he also doesn't smile. He's on the no-smiling San Diego team.
Never should have cut the cornrows, man.
That's true, yeah. It's the source of his power, man. Look at Kawhi, who was his once non-smiling teammate.
Yeah.
Must have been a festive
I don't think
room.
there's anything else to touch on. Calvin Watkins of ESPN Houston mentioned that the Raptors were a team that Houston had talked to about Dwight Howard. Zach Lowe pretty emphatically said the other day on Twitter that the Raptors had no interest in Dwight Howard. The Raptors should have no interest in Dwight Howard.
Poor Dwight Howard, man. No one likes Dwight Howard now.
Well, you're acquiring a 30-year-old guy on a rental who's been a bit of a malcontent places.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Rockets are a smart team. They're not going to give him away for nothing.
He's still good. It's just...
Oh, he is? He's having a really good year.
Yeah.
And he's, over the last couple seasons, he turns it up in the playoffs. He's not a bad player at all. He's not a guy that I'd want to give the max to this summer. So, if the package were like rental pieces and expiring pieces, sure, but it's not going to be that. The Rockets aren't dealing him without getting a first back. And then when you figure in how you have to match salary, you're giving up a couple pieces to get him too.
That might be.
I'm not in on Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
Given what it would take.
Which is crazy, man. 4 years ago, Dwight Howard was an MVP candidate.
Yeah, but 4 years ago, Dwight Howard was 26 years old and on a long-term contract.
Yeah. 4 years ago, Kobe was first team All NBA. 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Derrick Rose is still intact, kind of. Yeah.
Derrick Rose, there's a guy you could get from the Bulls.
Oh,
probably for nothing.
My God.
Yeah, the Bulls would trade Derrick Rose, right?
Do you think the Bulls will trade not Taj Gibson, but Pau Gasol?
No.
Yeah, they need.
I don't think that organization can accept missing the playoffs this season. And with Jimmy Butler out for like a month, and then Nikola Mirotic also on the shelf, Taj Gibson with a sore foot, Joakim Noah done for the season. They need Pau Gasol so badly this next month.
True.
Whereas a team that has a longer term outlook, might make a move like that because it'd be a good way to recoup assets and focus on next year. I think this team has taken on enough water over the last couple seasons and bad PR that the first year of a new coach post Tibbs too, they can't miss the playoffs.
That's true. That's a good point. You got to factor in the politics, and that's why it's not just all fantasy. Would you do this guy for that guy?
Though, because say all those guys except for Noah get healthy for the playoffs. Do you want this Bulls team in round one?
No.
They're still a team that can make some noise.
Which I hate that, by the way. The Raptors currently, as it stands, would face the Bulls. And it's just like, after all this, you're telling me that the Chicago Bulls, due to injuries and stuff, might play the Raptors in a 7-2 series? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple days. The deadline, I'm just as interested to see what other teams in the East do as well as the Raptors. The Raptors are obviously our focus. We will cover at the end of Thursday what other teams around the Raptors in the East did. Cleveland could make a move that shifts the landscape or makes them untouchable or maybe, reveals a weakness or something. The Celtics could make a move and become a threat to the Raptors, not necessarily as the 2 seed, but in a potential second round 2-3 matchup. The Hawks could bow out of the race. The Heat could bow out of the race. The Pacers, I get the feeling they're going to stand pat, but the Pacers could make a move, and I'm not a big believer in the Pacers.
No, I think the Raptors take the Pacers. It's not that big of a question.
If DeMarre Carroll's good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's huge. Although Paul George's shooting has really fallen off. You just kind of need a guy that prevents him from getting to the rim, and then hope he doesn't get hot. Which is, obviously it's a tough task. Paul George is very good, but sometimes he does get very cold.
And then the Bulls we talked about, the Hornets made an upgrade, and they kicked the tires on Dwight. They might not be done given how badly MJ wants to make the playoffs this year. The Pistons just got Tobias Harris. One of those teams I just mentioned is not going to make the playoffs. And then there are also the Wizards, who are only 3 games back of the Hornets, who probably should go into seller mode, but they need that playoff berth, I think, to help sell free agents for next year. If in the next 48 hours they decide to bow out, Jared Dudley, come on over.
Yeah, he's like a much better version of PJ Tucker.
Yeah, that's a dude I'd love to have in Toronto, and the Wizards. The Wizards are only 3 games out, which isn't a lot, but they also have to fight with the Pistons and the Magic, who are only 3.5 games out, to get to that spot. There are, you can't even count the Celtics as a for sure in because there are only 4 games. They're probably in, but there are going to be a good number of teams fighting for those last spots. That stands to make fewer sellers on the market, and it gives teams in that area a reason to also buy. Because the marginal value of a win right now for a team like the Pistons or the Hornets is huge because the final playoff spot might be decided by a single win. So, if you see a team make a move and you think it's an overpay, make sure you check the timeline that team's operating on and how long it's been since they were in the playoffs and how realistic a shot they have to get to the 7 seed because, no one wants to sell the farm to get the 8 seed and get rolled by Cleveland. But I would bet a team like Charlotte or Detroit or even Washington, looks at the Raptors and thinks, well, they haven't done anything in the playoffs yet, which, we think the Raptors are good, and I think they're the second best team in the East, but you couldn't blame another team for thinking that. So keep an eye on these other teams too. There are 11 teams in the East that are still competing for playoff spots and jockeying for position. So even if the Raptors don't make a move by Thursday at 3 p.m., things could change. The outlook for this team could change. And then, as we mentioned, there's also the potential Anthony Bennett cut to sign a guy. Who knows who might hit the market. The February 18th to March 1st buyout season.
David Lee. I mean, if you're cutting Anthony Bennett and then you bring in David Lee at a veteran's minimum, I think that's fine. But I mean, that's not a great, exciting deal at all. Because if you want to know what David Lee's like right now, he's like Luis Scola without the 3-point shot.
Okay, but his ability to pass when he puts it on the floor out of a pick and pop is like...
Yeah, it'll be very useful. It'll be very useful for sure. But I mean... Yeah.
This is the thing. I'm not willing to trade anything for David Lee, but if he hits the market...
Oh, for sure.
Sure, I'd take him over Anthony Bennett, even if he doesn't play. He's a guy who's been there, man. He's got a ring.
Maybe he goes back to the Warriors. Buy some more Chipotle for the staff. Hey, man, he's well-liked.
Yeah, no, I know. But who are the Warriors going to cut?
I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
Kevon Looney ain't going nowhere.
Apparently he's going to coming back, so there you go, buddy. Another player for the Warriors.
Okay, anyone else you want to touch on?
I don't know if you want to talk Rhino.
No. We've talked about him to death. I feel like I've written about him so many times. I think it's telling that Zach Lowe wrote about Ryan Anderson today and didn't mention the Raptors once.
That's true. Good point.
Zach Lowe's a guy who's kept his finger on the pulse of the Raptors pretty well. And the Raptors don't leak much, but Zach Lowe's a really smart guy, and he holds his information. He knows things. And I don't know if he knows things from the Raptors, but he knows things in general. And if he talks at length about Ryan Anderson and doesn't mention the Raptors, I think that could be taken as a sign that there's not much going on. I know Vincent Ellis of, I think, Detroit Free Press had the Raptors interested in Ryan Anderson the other day, and I think how that would have come about would have been, the Pistons were interested in Ryan Anderson, and he was hearing that the Raptors were also a team in on it. I would assume the Pistons are now out on Ryan Anderson.
Hey, one less suitor.
Yeah,
one less Ryan suitor.
Yeah, we talked about him to death, man. He'd be a big offensive upgrade, and what he can do as a potential third option on offense is great. Big defensive liability next to Jonas Valanciunas. Difficult to see getting him without losing Patrick Patterson and a pick in the deal too. So, your feelings about a Ryan Anderson deal are probably similar to your feelings about a Thad Young deal, although with the extra caveat that Ryan Anderson is completely a rental because there's no way in hell I'm paying him $20 million this offseason.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. But maybe his price comes down a little bit in the offseason just because now you no longer have the Pistons interested in him, I guess, as a free agent signing.
You're saying as the cap rises from $70 million to potentially $92 million with no good power forwards on the market because one team bows out, his price might come down.
Well, apparently the Kings are interested in him. Man, that's crazy. But the Kings are hilarious. The Kings are hilarious. Now they're going to try to get a real GM because apparently Vlade Divac didn't even know what the stretch provision was and that it existed, and that's why he made the salary dump deal with the Sixers in the offseason.
It's funny how you phrased it. The Kings are trying to get a real GM because the Kings are a real GM.
Hey, there you go.
It honestly, I love real GM, but it honestly seems like that team is run by the real GM forums. Like, they make so many moves and change their minds so often and tweak so many things and, don't have a great grasp on the salary cap. They're like, that's a perfect description of the real GM forum.
Yeah, well,
And I love real GM. Like, don't get
we're getting real GM a lot of shout-outs, but come to the Raptors Republic forum where you can comment in the Everything DeRozan thread, which I think is now like literally at 1 million comments.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's rough.
Okay, one more thing to talk about on the trade front.
All right. This is break.
The Raptors can throw in a little over $3 million to help facilitate a deal at the deadline. You can throw in a little cash too to help facilitate Raptors Republic's existence. We have a Patreon page up at patreon.com/Raptors Republic. If it's within your means and you like the site and want to support RR, any contribution made at patreon.com/Raptors Republic is greatly appreciated. You'll get a shout out on the podcast. You get first dibs on mailbag questions. Not that I ever turn them down anyway. We'll send you an 8x10 signed glossy of Will Lou.
For sure. I've got a great mustache
half
going
his
right
head
now.
will fit in the picture, but
it's only 8x10, guys.
Yeah. You gotta donate. You gotta contribute the highest possible level to get the, like, I don't know, what would it be?
The full. I would.
A4, is that the really big piece of paper? A4?
I would say at least 11 by 14. You know that one, the one that they cut in half.
We'll get you a Bristol board of Woohoo, like a little high school science project.
Perfect.
Bristol
I'll make
board.
it myself.
Oh boy. Okay. Anything else? How are we at an hour already?
Yeah.
Trade talk is crazy.
Yeah. We're going on this
Okay,
week.
we'll do this again. We'll be back late Thursday night or early Friday morning to talk post-deadline stuff. We'll break down all those teams we just talked about, and maybe a Raptors deal, maybe not, and it's not the end of the world if not, because the Raptors are still in a pretty okay spot, and Damari Carroll's ostensibly back sometime in the next couple of weeks. So, Will, anything else?
No, man. I'm just really excited for February 20th, which I think is the Raptors' first game, 19th? Yeah, February 19th, when we get to see Al Horford in the Raptors uniform for the first time.
Against a Bulls team with no Mirotic, no Butler, maybe no Taj Gibson, no Joakim Noah. So
we'll flex on that team for sure.
If they lose an 8th straight to the Bulls, yeah.
Don't even say it.
Then I mean it. That 2-7 matchup. I'm just closing up shop. Raptors Republic won't exist for that week.
Sorry.
Those 2 weeks. Okay, one more before we go.
All right.
One dark horse player who has not been tied to the Raptors. Throw a name out there that's going to land on the Raptors.
Omri Caspi.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. He's got a great deal too, man. He's only $3 million next year.
There are non-basketball reasons that the Sacramento Kings won't move on Caspi.
Yeah.
There are non-basketball reasons why the Kings won't sell, period. They're only 4.5 games back. They really want to make the playoffs so that they can enter their new arena next season, having made the playoffs. Omri Caspi is very tight with DeMarcus Cousins.
Very tight. They went mud bath bathing together in the Dead Sea.
Mudding. What are they, Louis Litt from Suits?
All right. Didn't get that one.
Wow, that reference is going to be lost on anyone with good taste in TV. I don't think the Kings moved. Omri Caspi is a guy I explored when I did that big, when I talked to other bloggers and writers and tried to come up with potential deals. If he ever came on the market, which, again, the Kings are too close to a playoff spot for him to go on the market, it would cost a pretty penny.
All right, fine.
Awesome.
Mirza Teletovic then, but
No, you can say Omri Caspi. I'm just responding.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of reasons why he wouldn't come. All right, what's you got one or you're out? You're tapped out.
Nick Young?
No, come on, man. That's like your Randy Foye, who, by the way, the Heat have trade interest in. All right, Randy Foye has value.
How much money does Randy Foye make? Because that's probably
$3 million.
It's probably a Haslam and a pick for Randy Foye to clear a little bit more luxury tax.
Good God, that Heat roster looks so odd.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Jared Dudley.
Ooh.
I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope the Wizards bow out. And
no, man, the Wizards are gonna trade for Ryan Anderson with that Kelly Oubre stuff.
Here you go. 3-way deal. Jared Dudley comes to Toronto in that trade, and something else ends up in New Orleans.
That actually kind of makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if the Wizards would be thrilled to funnel Jared Dudley to another East team, but maybe if the Wizards don't have enough to get that deal done, because Ryan Anderson does make sense for them.
Yeah, and look, it'd be great for you as a reporter because Jared Dudley is a great quote.
I wouldn't call me a reporter.
You're a reporter, man. I've seen your Instagrams. Check out Blake's Instagrams at the D-League All-Star Game. The shit is hilarious.
Did I have Instagrams at the D-League All-Star Game?
The one where you're like alone.
Oh, that was the celebrity game.
Oh, jeez.
There is a funny one though. Megan McPeak and Ashley Docking, who are the NBA TV and Raptors905.com crew for the 905, took a picture with John Jordan, Ronald Roberts, and Scott Suggs, who are all 905 representatives at the D-League All-Star Game. So, like, that's the regular 905 coverage squad, and I'm not in the picture. But if you look closely, I'm in the background working, and I'm the only person sitting in all those seats again.
That's Blake Murphy for you, buddy. It's Keep grinding, homie.
Homage to Catalonia, buddy. I'm still going to catch an Axel Toupon barreling out of bounds, or an Axel Toupon errant pass is going to break my nose or something like that.
Oh, boy.
All right. Jared Dudley.
We'll see you guys in 2 days.
Yeah, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Will.
Like an alley-oop, drop rhymes like dimes when I drop the hoop. Y'all must tune in if you want the scoop. The Rapcast crew on the numbers.